How do you feel about the perception of Black wrestlers by the wrestling community? And have you ever felt downplayed by fans specifically as a Black wrestler? JB or Gabe, do y'all want to chime in on that one?
I can take the first half of that. Let me fix this cord really quickly. So, I mean, the perception of Black wrestlers, that does tie into what each of those three guys just said. It's something that has to be overcome in a lot of cases. There isn't so much of an emphasis on technical progressions, and it does make it so that distance that I was talking about earlier is further emphasized. You can create more of a connection with someone when you understand what you can do for them technically, and when the technical facets of their wrestling can be emphasized. But I have to do the work of emphasizing those things in conversation for a lot of people. For instance, when I'm talking about elite wrestlers in America, when I'm talking about JB to a lot of people, they're always like the double leg, or even his hand fighting, if they want to give him more credit than most people give him for the double leg. But no one talks about the amount of technique that goes into the effectiveness of his lace. No one talks about that. People don't talk about his end of match scoring strategy. People don't talk about even the adjustments that he's had to make over the course of his career as he's getting older to be able to keep competing at a high level. It's always, well, he's athletic, he's explosive. At some point, it's going to catch up with him. He's getting old. We're waiting for him to lose, essentially. And that's something that always stuck with me. People don't always talk about how technical Jaden's defense is, or what technique even comes with what looks like timing. And a lot of those things are attributed to instincts. A lot of those things are attributed to the fact that work itself could not have been what generated that. Those habits, those just necessary background tendencies that we see time and time again that we can count on Black wrestlers doing in competition. So I feel like within the wrestling community, there's a bit of limitation that comes with technique, that comes with personality, that comes with conditioning. And those stigmas are only reinforced by the fact that there are other things happening. There are people who legitimately think of us as less, and there are people who don't think that way at all, but have grown up in cultures where they've been connected to people who think that way. I think that addressing how at times racialized words like athleticism and speed can be, I think addressing that is a necessary component of our plan to move forward in understanding one another better. Because I know a lot of athletic white wrestlers. There are a lot of people who have come from dual athlete parent backgrounds, and those things are technically attributed to savvy and slickness in a lot of cases, as opposed to what would be called timing for us, because it looks different. So the perception of us within the sport seems to me at times to be limiting, and it can lead to the second part of this question, which I think is a lot of high level Black wrestlers being downplayed by fans or media even.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Getting younger every day, bro. No, I think for me, the experiences that I've had in the wrestling community where I've felt like people have downplayed the significance of what I've done typically is in the process of describing legacy. I think one of the things that I realized was legacy is deeper than how many titles you win. It's more than just how many goals you bring home. Really, it's about the shift that you have to make as a Black athlete to ultimately be an ambassador. When I graduated in 2011 from Nebraska and went on to win my first world championship in Istanbul a few months later, like I had no idea what I was really capable of. I didn't know that I was going to become this Olympic champion. I didn't know I was going to be thrust into this position where I was going to be the face of USA Wrestling for a decade or more. And I remember instantly starting this grooming process for my very first interview. I remember stepping off the podium in Istanbul and people asking me like, hey, you're world champion. Congratulations. You're going to win $50,000. Like, what are you going to do next? And I was like, oh, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take some of this money and I'm going to party. And I remember afterwards, one of the dignitaries of USA Wrestling is like, listen, we never say party. We always say celebrate. And so like, I instantly knew from that day that I was going to have to go through a refinement process because of how people would view me. And the perception was different because I don't look like the majority of the young wrestlers out there. You know, one of the great feelings for me is to go to wrestling clubs and youth wrestling tournaments throughout the country and see little kids wearing my JB Elites. I think that's really cool. But I also understand that there are a lot of people who have watched me and they're like, I can never be that guy. See how long his arms are? You see how big his muscles are? You see how explosive his takedowns are? I can't be that guy. So I'm going to decide to follow someone who looks like me. And I think I've always tried to confront, you know, who I was at that time so I could become this more appealing athlete where I could transition into this person who transcended wrestling and really was able to widen the scope and broaden the audience from a wrestling perspective. But there have been times where I've been reminded, no matter how well you do, how much you compete, how eloquent your speech, how great you are in interviews, how personable you are, how charismatic you are, people still won't like you. There have been times where I've had people that have written under an Instagram caption just said, I'm sick of JB. I'm just sick of him. Like for no apparent reason, just like, I'm just sick of seeing this guy win. And there have been instances in which I felt like people just don't desire for me to win just because they want to see someone different. And regardless of how I've represented this country and how much I've done and how hard I've worked. But yeah, I can attest to some of those things that Gabe was mentioning, where I feel like there was a time in which I started to transition from I want to win to I need to prove to people that I'm working equally as hard as my contemporaries and that my technique is as sharp, I'm as savvy, I have the same amount of mat awareness, my IQ is as high. And you start to delineate from where you originated, where you're just like, I'm tough, I'm strong, my technique is on point, and you start to be the guy that people desire you to be, just so you can be appealing. And you know, it's a difficult position to be in. So I think about, you know, our positions as wrestlers. We're all amazing athletes. We're all men of honor. We all have voices, and I think particularly over the last week, I've really seen the significance of being downplayed as a wrestler when we speak up on matters pertaining to our culture. I posted a picture of George Floyd last week on Wednesday, and on your IG, you have, if you're verified, you have insights, where basically it shows you the metrics of your likes, your feedback. It shows you your followers, how many followers you gained that day, how many followers you lost. And on that day, I lost more followers than I had in the last month. On the day that I posted a picture of George Floyd, I lost more followers than I had lost in an entire month. And it was wild to see that red line dip down on the day that I posted George Floyd, because I thought that was one of my more impactful posts. And it was really meaningful to me and it resonated with me. And I really wanted to speak on what's going on in our culture. But a lot of wrestling fans were like, bro, you're a wrestler, stick to wrestling. And I think it is kind of reminiscent of what we've all saw today. If you guys have spent any time on Twitter seeing the young lady from, I believe it's Fox News, but basically in comparison to LeBron James and Drew Brees, when LeBron James makes a political stance, it's okay, shut up and dribble. When Drew Brees makes a political stance, it's this guy has a right to his own opinion. And I think that's kind of where I felt the most considerable downplaying in my career, is people attempting to suppress our voice. They're like, you're strictly entertainment. Go out and blast double people, win gold medals. That's what we want to see from you. We don't want you to have a stance. We don't want you to have a voice. And that's been something difficult for me personally as a wrestler. And that's something that I've always tried to combat, because there are a lot of times where you start to think of that backlash. And I think that's why a lot of people are opposed to speaking out, because they understand that if you take a stance, there are going to be some people that oppose this stance. But for me, I've always thought, as long as I can stand strong in truth and know that what I've done and what I post is making a significant change, then I'm going to stand behind it regardless of who I lose. and I'm just weeding out the guys that never were originally there for me, for the right reasons. And yeah, so that's what I think. And Gabe, I'm not old, bro.